Richard initially freezes, unsure whether the four men are truly stalking the woman. He questions whether it's even his place to intervene, especially since he's unarmed. But as he watches them follow her, concern overtakes hesitation. Realizing the danger the woman might be in, he crouches and thinks rapidly. Aware of a small cutoff on Hawker's trail ahead of her, he quickly formulates a plan. If she takes the main trail, he can intercept her and warn her about the men. With urgency mounting, he springs into action and runs down the trail to try and reach her in time. Richard is racing against time and exhaustion, trying to reach a hidden side trail before the men who are stalking a woman can catch her. He hopes that if he can guide her onto the cutoff, they can escape unnoticed, as the pursuers would likely assume she remained on the main trail. The cutoff leads away from danger and toward safety in the town of Heartland. Despite his fatigue from an earlier sprint, Richard pushes himself to run hard, reassured slightly by the cover of the trees and the quiet forest floor cushioned by pine needles. As he runs, he struggles to remember exactly where the small trail splits off. It's subtle and easy to miss. With every twist in the path, he searches for it, each moment bringing both hope and rising panic. He worries about what to say when he finds the woman, concerned she might mistake him for a threat or not believe he's there to help. Time will be short, and he knows he'll need to earn her trust instantly. Reaching the top of a rise, Richard scans for the fork in the path again, but sees nothing and keeps running. His breathing becomes labored, turning into gasps, and sweat soaks his shirt. The heat feels suffocating, though he knows it's only the strain of exertion. The forest blurs past as he presses on, knowing failure means the woman will be trapped with no choice but to fight or try to outrun her stalkers. Finally, just before a sharp bend, Richard spots the cutoff and nearly misses it. He scrambles to check for any tracks, hoping she has already taken the small path. There are none, but relief sweeps over him anyway. He collapses to his knees, overwhelmed, catching his breath. Richard collapses to the ground, breathless and aching after a desperate sprint. His relief at having arrived first is clouded by doubt. What if it's all just a prank? He worries about looking foolish, but pain and memory keep his fear grounded. A bite on his hand throbs, reminding him of strange sights in the sky and the ominous feeling he had earlier. The memory of four men following a woman, stalking her, comes back vividly. This isn't a game. He knows it. He stands slowly, heat radiating off him, and struggles to steady his breathing. Then he sees her. A young woman, appearing suddenly around a bend in the trail. Richard is struck by her presence, her long brown hair, the elegant white dress, the quiet power of her posture. There's nothing frivolous or ordinary about her, everything from her movement to her clothing speaks of intention and grace. When he approaches, cautiously stopping 3 strides away, she meets his gaze with eyes so intensely green and knowing that Richard feels as though he's known her forever. Richard stands before the woman, struck by the way she looks at him, not just with intensity, but with intelligence and a sense of deep integrity that makes him feel unexpectedly safe. A flash of memory reminds him why he's come, something urgent, something about time being precious. He tries to explain. From a nearby hill, he saw her, walking by the lake's edge, and he saw men following her. She listens without reaction at first, but when she asks how many, and he says, 4, the color drains from her face. She glances into the woods, scanning the shadows, then turns back to him, her green eyes locked on his. She asks plainly if he's choosing to help her, and though he hasn't fully thought it through, he hears himself say yes. That softens her, just slightly, and she asks what he would have them do. Richard offers a plan. There's a small side trail nearby. If they take it and the men stay on the main path, they might get away. She questions the plan's weakness. What if they follow the trail? He insists he'll hide their tracks, that they won't be followed. But her urgency cuts through his hope. If they do follow, what then? What is his real plan? The stakes are clear, and evasion alone might not be enough. After deciding to flee, Richard and the woman act quickly and silently to avoid revealing their location. Richard covers their tracks and signals her to go ahead so he can shield her from the approaching men. She obeys without hesitation, moving swiftly through the dense forest. They follow a narrow path through thick, dark evergreens, unable to see much around them. As they move on, the forest changes, becoming rockier with thinner trees and more visibility. The environment shifts from pine to birch trees, with scattered leaves and quiet, watchful stillness, broken only by the sounds of a few ravens. Eventually, they reach a granite wall, and Richard silently signals her to stay quiet as they continue carefully. Richard and the woman move carefully through the forest, trying to stay silent to avoid detection. Richard helps guide her over mossy rocks to prevent noise from snapping twigs. As they ascend, the forest thins, the terrain becomes rocky, and trees are sparse and twisted. Despite the steep, challenging trail, the woman keeps pace easily, showing her experience with travel. Richard is impressed but remains silent out of fear. After over an hour, they emerge from the trees into sunlight and head east along ledges. Richard stays vigilant, watching for signs of their pursuers, knowing the open terrain makes them vulnerable. Richard and the woman move carefully through the forest, avoiding dry sticks and noisy ground by stepping on mossy rocks. Richard communicates silently, showing her how to avoid making noise, and though they're fleeing, he finds warmth in her unexpected smile. As they climb higher, the trees thin, replaced by rock and windswept roots. They slip out of the forest and onto narrow ledges, the path steep and hard, but she keeps pace with skill and determination, wearing worn, soft leather boots. Richard guides her in silence, cautious of the 4 men pursuing them. An hour passes, and they climb into the sunlight, the path exposed. Richard remains alert, checking behind them often. Though they appear alone now, he's still wary. The trail hugs the cliffs of Blunt Mountain, offering a view of the southern forest and the boundary beyond, where brown, dead trees hint at something sinister, something Richard realizes is caused by a deadly vine. The sky is clear, marked by a strange, snake-like cloud Richard recognizes, reminding him of Zed, a friend who might lecture him about its significance. As they move across the narrow cliff trail, they are fully exposed, but Richard is relieved. Even if the men gave chase, the mistake in direction would give him and the woman a safe lead. The path, once narrow and dangerous, finally begins to widen as they near the far side of the cliff face.
Richard and the woman are walking along a narrow trail when suddenly 2 large, muscular men in dark green hooded cloaks appear ahead of them. Before they can react, 2 more men drop down from above, blocking their escape. All 4 men are armed and imposing. The leader, calm but threatening, tells Richard they're only interested in the woman. Despite the danger, Richard remains composed. He senses the men aren't afraid of him and don't consider him a threat. As he looks at the woman, he sees a proud, desperate plea in her green eyes. Quietly but firmly, he promises her, "I won't leave you."
Richard stands in a tense standoff. A woman, calm and emotionless, gives him final instructions and offers a blessing before stepping aside. A threatening leader, backed by armed men, confronts Richard. As fear overtakes him, violence erupts. A man draws a sword and charges. Just before the blow lands, a mysterious and powerful shockwave bursts outward, halting the attackers and sending dust flying. Richard, seizing the moment, hurls himself into the sword wielder, knocking him into the air and out of the path. Richard is shocked as he sees another attacker fall, mortally wounded. Before he can react, the knife-wielding leader strikes him hard in the chest, slamming him into the rock wall. Though dazed and barely conscious, Richard manages to grab the attacker and spin him around just as the knife arcs toward him. As Richard prepares for death, another attacker, covered in blood, charges and impales the leader, pushing both of them over the cliff to their deaths. Richard, stunned, turns to find the woman alive, sitting silently against the cliff wall. They are both overwhelmed and unable to fully process what just happened. Richard sits beside her, noticing blood on her hand and reflecting on their improbable survival and the mysterious shockwave that saved them. Richard Cypher and a mysterious woman share a quiet and emotionally charged moment after a traumatic event. The woman reveals she was too afraid to speak before, worried the men chasing her would find them. Richard introduces himself, and she responds warmly, saying there aren't many who would have stood by her, and calls him a rare person. Her name is revealed to be Kaylin Amnell. Richard is struck by her presence and kindness, while still trying to make sense of a supernatural event involving thunder without sound. Their exchange builds emotional and romantic tension between them. Richard and Kaylin reflect on the aftermath of a dangerous encounter. Richard calls Kaylin a friend, which surprises her as she admits she's never really had friends before, except her sister. Richard assures her she has one now, as they survived something terrifying together. As he looks out over the forest known as the Ven, Richard notices the dead and dying trees near the mysterious boundary. He recalls how he had no idea the deadly vine that bit him was so close to it. The boundary is feared, rumored to steal not just lives but souls. Kaylin, when asked how they survived, quietly suggests that the good spirits protected them. Richard doesn't believe it, but he respects her choice not to explain more. Richard and the woman, Kaylin, rest after escaping the soldiers. As they sit together near a stream, Richard remains on edge, still worried about pursuit. The woman is calm, expressing trust in Richard's protection. Their conversation reveals growing respect and subtle trust between them. When Kaelin falls asleep beside him, Richard reflects on the danger they're in and the sense of responsibility he feels for her. The chapter closes on a moment of quiet. Richard keeps watch while she sleeps, determined to protect her.